Hi everyone, Professor Gustin here, and we are going to be talking about the respiratory system. This is going to build on some of the information that we learned about the cardiovascular system and about cells and pH. So a lot of the things that we've talked about throughout this semester so far are going to start rolling into the topics that we're covering. So hang on, here we go. I said the trick is to keep breathing. Breathing can be a very good thing. All right. So section 10.1, we're going to list the functions of the respiratory system. And pretty much there's one big function, and that is breathing. You also can hear breathing called ventilation. So moving air in and out of the lungs. So breathing or ventilation, moving air in and out of the lungs. But when you think about it, like, oh, well, why do we have to breathe? And that goes back to all the way back, we were talking about cells and how do cells get energy. And we were talking about cellular respiration. And then we were talking about how blood carries oxygen and all our cells need oxygen. So why do our lungs need to breathe? Why do we say, oh, our lungs need oxygen. But go back and think about your overall equation for aerobic cellular respiration. Our cells need food, glucose. They need oxygen in order to make carbon dioxide and water. Those are waste products, but in order to make ATP. So remember, we need food and oxygen to get ATP. Just like wood, when you burn wood, you need oxygen. It doesn't happen, combustion doesn't happen in the absence of oxygen. So just the same thing for burning the fuel in our foods, that we need oxygen for cellular respiration to happen. So why do the lungs need oxygen? Because our cells need energy, and our lungs are just the device that are getting that oxygen to our cells in order to do cellular respiration. So it all starts kind of hooking together. What you're going to do is you're going to identify the structures associated with the upper and lower respiratory tracts on a diagram. And this is the diagram out of your book. Now, you can see here, it has it divided into upper and lower respiratory tract. Most books divide it so the larynx is in the lower respiratory tract. It's not that important whether you have it in the upper respiratory tract or the lower respiratory tract. I want you to be aware that people do refer to the upper respiratory tract and the lower respiratory tract. And you can see here, the upper respiratory tract is the nasal cavity, and the sinuses are in there. The pharynx, which is one of the more confusing parts of the body, people forget what it is, but it just means the throat. It's the dual passageway for the food and air. So the pharynx is the throat. We're going to go into more detail about this, but the glottis is the opening to the larynx, and the larynx is the voice box. Then we get down into the lower respiratory tract. We have the trachea. Trachea branches into two bronchi, and I put over here that here it says a bronchus. Bronchus is singular, bronchi is plural. So the trachea branches into two bronchi. You follow one bronchus along, and that breaks into lots more smaller pathways called bronchioles, which get us to the lungs. And then, although it's not continuous with the lungs, we're also going to talk a little bit about the diaphragm. So make sure you can identify all these parts on a diagram, and we're also going to trace the flow of air in and out of the lungs. And we're going to expand on this as we go along. So make sure you can trace the path of air from the nasal cavities to the lungs, and you'll get more practice doing that. Explain how the flow of air differs during inspiration and expiration. Oh, I didn't give you those words. In fact, I moved them towards the end. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later. And describe the functions of the respiratory system. Well, pretty much to get oxygen to get oxygen to our blood and ultimately to our cells through the cardiovascular system. I'm going to go on to section 10.2 and start talking about the structures of the upper respiratory tract. And so we're going to go specifically talking about each one and their functions. And so you can see right here that we have them here. The nasal cavity is going to filter warm and moisten air. Did you ever do that, like take a deep breath on a cold day, like outside exercising in the really cold weather? And it actually hurts your lungs. It jolts them. It can be actually painful. And so warm air is more compatible to healthy lungs. So our nasal cavity starts off by warming the air. It moistens the air. We're also familiar with the idea when the air is too dry, we can get bloody noses or other complications. We actually open ourselves up more to infections when air coming in is really dry. And it also filters the air. We're going to talk a little bit about how there's some cells in the respiratory tract that are going to be taking away particles. Like I said, the pharynx is the throat, the dual passageway for the air and the food. The glottis is the space between the vocal cords. And I'm going to show that to you in another picture. And the larynx is the voice box. So let's go to another picture and see that. Actually, before I do that, you can kind of see right here that the larynx, the voice box, has a little bulge there. And that's more prominent in men than women. And so you can feel in the front of your neck right there, you can feel where your larynx is. In fact, as I'm touching it, I can make my voice kind of go wiggly because I'm affecting my vocal cords in there. So let's look at the larynx. So if we look at the larynx as if we're putting a tube down our throat. So here we are, it says the base of the tongue. So you're putting a tube down someone's throat and looking into there. So so you're in the pharynx right here. And what you can see is there's the base of the tongue. Here's the vocal cords you can see. And so depending on how these are muscles. So depending on how contracted they are, it's going to influence the quality of the sound coming out of the larynx. So notice I just did that. I took a deep breath and I have to be pushing air out of my lungs and through my larynx in order to speak. I can only speak as my voice is going out, or I can only control it well through the vocal cords. The glottis is a hole, and it's the opening it's the hole that's created in the opening of the larynx. We talked a little bit about the epiglottis when we talked about digestive system, and you might remember that the epiglottis is a piece of cartilage that covers the glottis or covers the entryway to the respiratory tract. So here's that entryway. It's the opening through the larynx called the glottis. There we go. I wanted to show you the same thing side view. So there's the nasal passageway. Air is going to come down here into the pharynx. All this is pharynx. And then oh, that's the roof of the mouth, the soft palate hanging down. And then here we go. Here's the epiglottis, that piece of cartilage that when you swallow, here's the glottis, the opening to the larynx that we just looked inside of. And remember that this is when you're swallowing, you're going to breathe, this trachea is actually going to move up, and this epiglottis is going to close over the glottis so you don't force food into there. Okay, so you check the progress. Describe the function of each of the structures of the respiratory system, and name and briefly describe the body systems that have connections with the pharynx. Oh, name and briefly describe the body systems that have connections with the pharynx. Oh, let's see. Well, I can think of the digestive system, the respiratory system. They're actually, yeah, those are the main ones. Anyway, I don't know if they were talking about the ear connecting in there too, but we didn't talk about that. Explain how sound is produced. And the sound is just simply, as far as the amount of detail I went into, being produced through the larynx and the vocal cords. I think I'll stop right there and we'll start in 10.3 in the next video.